Get an account here. Let's take a look here. Well, good afternoon. It looks like we have 12 on our group here today, recognizing some names. Let's see. Good to see Charles. I see. Welcome, Julie, Katie, Maria and Ty, Jared, Spring Hill. Hi, Patty, Catherine Fraser, and looks like a couple different logins there. All right, good. Great to see all you guys. My expert for today is Patty Baird, owner of the Cedar House Sport Hotel in Truckee, California. And Patty will be truly our content expert on implementing these protocols. I want to thank Priya for being our note taker today and the recording, and keeping an eye out for you guys on chat. We are going to assume that you've all read the guidelines in depth and ad nauseum. They do take a little while and they're quite involved. So we're not going to do that today. Can I see a show of hands, or just do a little chat comment if you have not read the guidelines? Thanks, Priya, for that. All right, it looks like an acknowledgement that you've all read the guidelines, and there is a checklist as well. All right, I'm going to cue this up with just the basic structure of the guidelines, which are, as we all know, a worksite specific plan, then your employee training, your sterilization procedures, and several other steps involved, particularly in your in common areas. Patty is going to represent her expertise in implementing these protocols as a hotelier. If you are a short-term rental owner and you have a specific question, we'll address that as best as we can. So it's going to be kind of casual, you guys, and a little bit of chatting back and forth, and make sure you get your questions answered. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Patty Baird.
Hi, everybody. Colleen and I, we spoke about, and as she addressed, we assumed that most people have read all the guidelines. And so we thought it would just be better to, maybe chat about, maybe some of the issues that you've encountered. One of the things that I have felt is that a lot of the things, I wouldn't call the guidelines reactionary, but maybe some of the ways that we think we need how to implement them may be reactionary. And so what I thought I would do is to maybe go over a little bit of the things that we're doing here, have some questions answered, and just go from there. I think most of you probably already know about the worksite specific plans. I'm sure most of you have already gone through staff training, how you're doing the screening and so forth. But if you have questions on that, feel free to ask. What I thought would be probably more important is to go over maybe enhanced cleaning protocols, what we're experiencing, the steps that we're taking, and maybe hearing your questions, hearing your experience, I think will be able to help all of us. So just a little background, we closed down in March, so we closed down for 2.5 months, and then we reopened June 1st. Figuring, I was hopeful, which it did occur, that leisure would eventually open up, which it did in the middle of June. But by opening up June 1st, we were able to put in or begin to practice, some of the protocols that we put into place to see if it worked, how to adapt to them, and so forth. So one of the things that we decided to do, of course we follow all the guidelines, but we actually decided to go a step further. I'm sure that all of you have seen what a lot of the flagged hotels are doing. It all seems to be, it's safety and cleanliness is the big selling points, right now. And what we probably follow the closest is probably Marriott's, because we have a partnership with Ecolab and so forth. And so we've elected to go with the electrostatic cleaning methods. The other thing that we have noticed is that the enhanced clean now, our time to clean a room properly is actually double the time. And so we're trying to make adjustments with that. I've got checklists help not so much to check each thing off, but as reminders are helpful in speeding up the process. But the way that we're doing this is that with electrostatic cleaners, we're hoping that, let me just backtrack a little bit. One of the recommendations on the guidelines is to down a room for 24 to 72 hours, if possible. And how we're trying to do this is by actually holding off 40% of our inventory off of availability and then adjusting it daily. And so that in itself has become very labor intensive for the front desk. But I thought we would do that to slowly get housekeeping trained and used to and adapt to the new protocols. When we have a checkout, the first thing that we do is we go into a room. I have 2 housemen that are completely dressed in full PPE, the moon, almost like hazmat suits with goggles, masks, the N95 mask. And they open up the windows, turn on the ventilation, and they completely, with the electrostatic misting, they completely disinfect the room. We usually let it sit for 24 hours, and then the housekeepers come in. Sometimes that is not possible. And so one of the things that I am starting to deal with the electrostatic machines is that the chemicals are actually very irritating to the housekeepers. I do require them to wear full-on goggles, and the N95 masks are very difficult to obtain, plus they're difficult to work in, and so I mandate that they wear the K95 mask, but they're still having some difficulties dealing with the, I don't want to say chemicals, but I guess that's what it is. They're complaining a little bit of irritation and, for breathing and so forth. But we're sort of adjusting it daily, and that hopefully is improving. But because of that, I'm actually contemplating looking at the UV, the air disinfectant machines using UV light. Those are a little bit more expensive. However, what they do allow is to allow you to go in, disinfect the room in 10 minutes, and it becomes very safe for the housekeepers to come in. And I think eventually will allow us to turn the rooms over. Because the last 2 weeks, one of the things that I have noticed is that we're dealing with more labor, but because we're taking and trying to rest or let rooms sit, the inventory, we have to be, it's a tougher balancing act, balancing payroll with the actual revenue that we're able to generate and so forth. So that's kind of one of the challenges is that we've noticed, but each day it is improving. We're learning, maybe a little less spraying, bringing in fans to clear the electrostatic misting, created by the fog machines and so forth. Does anyone have any questions before I continue?
Since we're a pretty small group, I think you can just start speaking, and then you'll become the speaker on the screen. So go ahead and unmute yourself if you had a quick question around any of that so far. Jared, anything? Charles, Julie?
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I thought I would just bring up is we we read a lot about gloves, but I just thought I would mention that, you know, like even in the food industry, wearing gloves have been found to actually be less, you know, it's not as safe, as it's more hygienic to keep washing hands. And so one of the things that we do with the gloves with the housekeepers is obviously handling any harsh chemicals and things, you know, using all the same protocols and the guidance, you know, changing the gloves and so forth. But the other area that we use gloves is to ensure, you know, maybe a feeling of safety for the guests when we're bringing perhaps something to the room upon request. We usually put it in baskets and knock at the door, but sometimes, you know, they'll answer it very quickly and things. So we try to wear gloves to handle, I, I don't want to say it, to give that added feeling of safety. But in all honesty, if you consistently wash your hands, that's actually, studies have shown that it's actually better than to leave gloves on, because there's a tendency to not wash hands and just leave gloves on for a longer period of time on that. So I thought I would just kind of bring up, you know, in terms of the requirements, you know, with staff with gloves and so forth. The other, let's see here, signage. I'm finding that signage, where you're putting it, is becoming very crucial. I'm noticing that signs and windows and things like that, because every business is employing that, there's a bit of sign blindage that is happening. And so I have noticed better compliance with signage when it's sort of a little bit larger, like on sandwich boards, and more sort of in the path that they will walk. One of the issues that we are noticing, and it is a little bit of a challenge, you know, all of our staff, as well, I'm sure all of your staff is wearing masks and so forth, but we're noticing that that guests are not as compliant with masks. It has helped when I switched over to the big sandwich board. I have noticed a lot of people coming up to the front lobby without a mask, seeing the sign and going back to their car. So that part is encouraging. However, when I've still noticed that when the guest is there for a while, they tend to not wear masks when they return back to either the, we have a bar in our lobby that they can order a drink and so forth. So I'm noticing that. And I'm just kind of curious with the other hotels, how you're finding, you know, compliance with mask wearing, and how does your staff feel about it? You know, from from the staff feeling safe and so forth.
Jared, I know you're not open yet, and Charles, not sure how, if you have the ability to share that with us. Right now I see you're on mute. 50-50 staff are fine. No. Okay, gotcha. All right. Thanks for that,
Yeah, we're
Chow.
good for sure. We will have masks when we open.
You will have masks when you open? Okay, good.
Well, the staff has, what it is because there's no state mandate nor county mandate or requirement to have masks, there's no really consequence or a way to enforce it. So that's one of the questions that I have in regard to mask wearing.
Again, anyone can speak up at any time. And if well, wanted to check in on the who's represented here on the group: Ty, Shelley, Katie, Julie, and number 5. Are you short-term rentals or hotels, inns, motels? I don't know your names, and it would be great to know if you're representing a short-term rental private home. If you could put yourself on video and raise your hand if you're a short-term rental.
So just to speak up quickly, Shelley, I'm in outside sales and I travel in Nevada County extensively, staying in hotels. And so I got this communication via the association and wanted to just figure out what you guys were all doing to make sure that when I come up and spend money up there, hopefully in July, that you're taking care of me. And then what
great.
well.
Yes.
Ty Boutel here. We have a short-term rental.
Great, welcome, Ty. What town or city, or other area?
Tahoe, Truckee.
Oh, great. Welcome, Ty.
Thank you.
Julie?
I have a short-term rental in the Boulders in Truckee.
Great. Lisa? You're on mute, Lisa. I will.
I have a short-term rental in Tahoe Donner, and I work with Turnkey
Oh, great.
property rental. But I just wanted to be savvy in how it all works and what the requirements are.
Great. Please keep yourselves on video. I'm going to ask you all a question. Who did I not hear from? Katie, maybe? Or Shelley?
I put mine in the chat, but I'm with Tahoe Exclusive Vacation Rentals, and we're short-term rentals.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
So,
Okay.
You're gonna what?
Go ahead.
okay, so since we have a lot of short-term rentals, I've actually received a few emails from property managers. And so if you have like any questions, because a lot of our cleaning, methods can be transferred over, to the house. One of the questions that was actually emailed to me a lot was the ability to get cleaning products. For us, we obtain most of our products by concentrate. So we actually have machines, and it's a far more cost-effective method of making, the sanitizers and the cleaning products and things like that. However, I do feel that there are a couple of local janitorial companies that I had sent links to that might be helpful. So if you wanted to email me on that, just feel free to do that. But I know that was a very common question, along with questions regarding kitchens. In the hotel room, one of the things that we did was to reduce the touch points as much as possible. Obviously there's going to be common, doorknobs, remotes, the things that you can't remove, but certain items, magazines, reading material, things that weren't necessary for the room itself, we've actually removed. And to kind of be honest with you, some of the things that we've had to adapt, the space, our space around the social distancing and things, some of it, like how I redid our lobby, I kind of like it, and it might end up just being that way. And so forth. And, I don't really miss some of the magazines and the newspapers and all of those types of things. So, as we begin to adapt to, the new regulations, I foresee, at least for myself, that some of these new things will actually be helpful, and it will probably remain as part of, the way we do things. And so getting back to the kitchens, so I myself travel a lot, and I travel overseas, and I often will rent out what are called like service apartments. They're like they're in a hotel, but they're like a condo. So you have the full kitchens and everything. And one of the things that I always did, it worked perfectly for me, was that these kitchens only had what you needed, meaning that it had 4 plates, 4 coffee cups, it just had, 3 pots and pans and so forth. And that always worked for me. It never had, spices and those types of things. And so it may be, I know some of you may be dealing with owners, and I'm sure that there is an owner like lock closet and so forth. So it might be, to talk with the owner, and it just might be easier to remove and just only include the very basics that any stay would need, and not, every utensil and 6 different spatulas and things like that. Because what the guidelines do state is that anything that could potentially be touched, or even if it appears unused, you still have to remove it, or you still have to clean it. So in the hotel room, one of the things that we do, instead of having additional rolls of toilet paper, because if you have extra rolls of toilet paper, when that guest leaves, you are required to discard it, which, again, creates a lot of waste. So what we tell, and we also send this to the guest ahead of time, so you sort of set the expectation that there are reduced amenities in the room. However, you can easily text us and we can easily resupply that. And so I think from a short-term rental aspect, again, setting the expectation ahead of time, knowing that you're not going to have a bunch of spices and all of these types of things, it allows the guests to know, and they'll just bring it themselves. And then that should hopefully make the whole kitchen routine easier if you're able to, minimize exactly what they're going to find in the cupboards and so forth. So that is similar to what we had to do in the hotel rooms. And, again, after looking at it, I kind of like it. It kind of makes things a lot easier. From a cleaning standpoint. And it does have a more sanitary or fresher feel to it on that. So.
Any other questions? Or someone had mentioned they had not seen the guidelines yet. There's a special few pages dedicated to short-term rentals. I'd really encourage you to read that carefully. Things such as there's a particular filter type now required of the vacuum cleaner, ventilation when cleaning. As Patty said, less is best.
Yes.
Yeah, and at the moment, you don't want to be short-term renting if you're also living in the residence. That's not a part of this guidance allowance at the current time. Again, it's all about fewer interactions with any other folks out there. Other things of note, just to point out, hot tubs are not a go right now. So saunas, hot tubs are a no-go right now, but pools are. So yes, Lisa, you're raising your hand. Unmute yourself. There you go.
So does that mean a jacuzzi tub cannot be utilized then?
Correct. Per the guidelines, yeah.
So you just tell the customer, the guest that, and then if they use it, that's like their deal.
It's you're the business owner. Whatever you think is the safest and best decision, you could. I mean, we would, if it were me, I would turn it off and have it cold. I don't know if anyone would want to go in a cold tub. It's again just to prevent folks from using the hot tub or the jacuzzi.
Yeah, this is not a hot tub outside. This is the tub in the house in the back.
Oh,
The jacuzzi style tub.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine.
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the short-term rental aspect that we could try to field for you? who's on who's on a there you go, Julie, I see you raising your hand. Go for it.
Yes, question on the short-term rental. If I am going to do the 72-hour block off between renters, do the cleaners have to change their gloves after every room? I mean, the cleaning says, does it change how you do things if you have that 72-hour block off? I have a condo.
Patty, you want to take that one? And the
Sure.
7 hours is highly recommended. It's not required or mandated,
Right.
but it's probably a good choice. But Patty, the glove thing, I'm not sure about.
Well, basically in the hotel world, what is recommended is that when you're moving from room to room, obviously you don't want to cross-contaminate. And so the gloves are only utilized for that room. Now, in a house, you could, I'm not really, this is maybe a little bit beyond, because I'm more in the hotel world and so forth. But logic tells you that it's essentially like the same user. But I still feel that if you clean a bathroom, I think before you clean the bedroom or something, I would recommend changing gloves to prevent any type of cross-contamination on that. So the glove change is relatively easy on that. I would definitely change your gloves. You clean the bathroom, you change your gloves before you clean the kitchen and so forth. So that would be, my recommendation, because in the hotel room, typically they're changing their gloves, obviously between rooms, but they're also changing it when they do the bathroom, and then they do the main room itself when they're changing linens. But when they're changing linens and so forth, my housekeepers are most likely not wearing the gloves for that. They're just making sure, that their hands are sanitized and so forth. But obviously when they're dealing with harsher or heavier cleaning disinfectants and so forth. So one of the things that I did want to also address just came to mind is that we're concentrating so much on disinfecting the room, and we have to remember that disinfecting doesn't clean dirt. So that's kind of, everyone's just so concentrating on, touch surfaces and things, that we still have to take a look at, dirt accumulation, in other areas. But in the hotel world, we clean rooms. It's just sort of, like in the kitchen and the restaurant environment, cleaning is what we do and so forth. So if you really, even though when you first read all of the guidelines, they could look daunting, but day by day, you'll begin to notice that it's just a little bit more. What I'm dealing with is, because I took it to the next level, that is actually not a requirement with the guidelines, is to go with the electrostatic disinfection machines. I also have 2 air purifiers that sometimes I will also utilize for that. But what I'm looking at right now, because it's slowly ramping up, the ability to down rooms is still possible. But I also have a small hotel. We only have 40 rooms, and with certain room types, they could potentially be booked, back to back. And with the electrostatic machines, the air purifiers, I'm employing those methods to allow me the option to be able to book back to back as the season continues, because that is not disallowed, under the guidance. However, I still want to make sure that our guests feel safe. And that's part of, at least in in the lodging or in our industry, I think right now we have to communicate flexibility and also empathy and understanding. Most of the calls that we are getting, they are asking how safe it is. They want to. It is our job to make them, to ensure that they will feel safe here. And so I do think I told Colleen this story, and it was, it felt good, I would have to admit. So about a week after our reopening, we were practicing and implementing all of these different things and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I work at the front desk. I'm very engaging with all of our guests and so forth. And I had a guest come up and they go, I need to speak to the owner. And, anytime you hear that, especially in sort of a flat tone, you kind of gulp. And so, I turned around. Hi, I'm Patty. I'm the owner. How can I help you? And he said that he actually was here on business. He was en route from coming back from Tahoe's to, I think maybe up in Bachelor or something. So what he was a consultant for lodging for a lot of the ski industry resorts. And what he said, he goes, everything I saw here was spot on for COVID-19. And he talked about what I had on the website, setting the expectation. So one of the things that we do is that each day, all of our arrivals of the day receive a welcome text, because we communicate via, that's one of the options that we can communicate via text with our guests. And so, first of all, when they make the reservation, of course, they get the confirmation, and then there's direct links to our COVID, what we're doing here. But I also chose to put in the full COVID-19 operational plan. It's very long, but you'd be surprised how many people will actually read it. And then when the day of the arrival, they receive a text, again, they have another link to what to expect, and so forth. When they check in, we explain, again, some of the, not to constantly repeat ourselds, but we do explain, and again, you're always setting that expectation for safety, and, because they're looking for that. And then when they go into their room, the things that we have, we decided to put in what we call COVID-19 amenity kits, which are kits with 2 masks, 2 pairs of gloves. We also have hand sanitizers. And this, in essence, sort of replaced the mini bar. They are not free, but if it's very clear that if they take them, their room will be charged, for these. And we have sold a lot of those. A lot of the guests are taking, they do have appreciation for that. One of the things that we had to change, we used to do a breakfast buffet. We no longer do that. And in a sense, just kind of looking toward the future, that changing the buffet actually is something we'll probably keep, because we're able, by going to more of a cafe type of menu offering, there's less food waste, more options, for the guests. But again, we did change it to now be a paid breakfast versus a complimentary breakfast buffet, which there are some grumblings from, because we have a lot of repeat guests, but they also understand. And so in a certain sense, this the new protocols allowed us the opportunity to perhaps change our breakfast into eventually a revenue center versus a cost center. So there are things, again, adapting to our new environment, there's some things that we're discovering that might actually become beneficial in the long run. And new, instead of always sticking to the traditional methods that we always done things, these newer ways are starting to, they're actually working well, that we will continue, to use them for the future. The other thing that this is what is more in the hotel world. One of the things we've had to all deal with are what they call the sneeze guard things, to protect staff. I wanted to find something a little bit more stylish, so it didn't have the bulletproof glass feel, that you sometimes see in, liquor stores and things like that. And I did find a really, a source. The company is called Grip Lock. They actually do a lot of lighting fixtures, very stylish, modern lighting fixtures. And so forth. And they have developed very stylish screens that can not only be used for the front desk, but it can also help with the social distancing aspect in your lobby, in your dining room, and so forth. And they actually are really nice looking. So if you needed information, regarding devices, contactless devices that kind of maybe integrate more into design, there's surprisingly a lot of products that are coming on the market.
Patty, what's the name again? I'll type it into the chat.
For that.
Say it again. Looks like you're a little frozen right now.
The company is called Grip Lock. But
Grip.
what I'll do is I will send you the link to the company, and they have some really nice stuff.
Cool.
I can include the link in my notes as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all right.
You guys, we have about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to just check on any other questions, and anything goes. And I wanted to add a little bit to something Patty had said. Ty, did you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Again, just for the short-term rentals, that 72-hour recommended, gap, is that after the cleaner leaves, or can the cleaner be in the middle of that?
Good question.
All right, think about that one. Air filters in the house. We talked about replacing those in the vacuum. Should the air filters in the house be cleaned, replaced more often? And should it be a higher level filter?
They did not cite actual home filtering systems, just the vacuum, but I would recommend that.
Okay, I heard part of that. I know the vacuums have to have the HEPA.
Yeah. Patty, you're frozen again. But Ty, on the 72-hour thing, and I'm not an expert, and maybe Priya, we could send this to the COVID email and get it straight from county as they would like it. The county COVID email address.
I will include that email in the chat as well, and potentially if we have time to debrief, maybe there'll be time to ask some within the meeting as well. But I have written the questions down.
We're going to go back to the main meeting room in a minute here, and Ty, you could say that again, and the county folks can see how they reply to that one. Just on a final quick note before we head up, remember to include in whether you're on Airbnb, Vacasa, or VRBO, if you have your own rules of engagement as the host, be sure and cite in there what you're doing for cleaning. That gives you a little bit of a competitive edge. I wouldn't ignore it. And I know you guys have a lot of controls on what you can and can't put on your postings there. And with that, are we jumping offline here soon, Priya?
Can I ask you one more quick question?
Yeah.
Do you think it makes sense to have our guests bring their own linens? Does that even help the matter? And then along those same lines, duvet covers, things like that are harder to wash every time. How do we handle that?
Some of the property managers have, I think we're
going to get kicked out here in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead and ask that in the main session.
See, well, we probably are pretty close to having everybody back. We may have had a few folks drop out. So I want to welcome you back. Thank you for being here. And at this point, we're all back together. So there is a chance that you were in a breakout room and that was valuable information to you, but you also really wanted some information about another group, and you can only be in one place at one time. So this is a time to, in the chat, list any question you may still have that wasn't answered, or that you weren't in that room so you didn't get to ask it, or something you need. What's a resource you need that will help you to open your business? So this is the time we'd ask you to put it in the chat, and then we're going to ask our facilitators to respond to that or to put resources into the information. So I am inviting you to go ahead and put down in the chat what remaining questions that you have, or what do you need. And sometimes you might need something, and one of you has an answer for somebody else who's here, a resource in terms of the PPE, or just a question that one of the folks here could answer as well. So let's see if anybody has, I see 8 new messages. So let me see what's coming up here. Okay, so one of the messages here is 72-hour downtime. Can the cleaner be in the middle of that in terms of short-term rentals? So I could go to Colleen or anybody, one of our county folks that wants to jump into that.
Hey, Lori, this is Colleen. I did not have the answer to that. That's almost a trick question. So I'm going to lean on county on that. I know 72 hours is highly recommended, but not required. And then we had Cedar House Sport Hotel not do the 72-hour, but due to the extensive cleaning. So I don't know quite. That's a gray area there. And then there's another question about the duvet cleaning, duvet cover cleaning or down comforter cleaning after each visit with a short-term rental. That could take quite a bit of time and cost, and maybe that would be considering changing that out and not using those types of things. But does county have an official word or official reply to that by any chance?
Well, I'd love to put Amy or Ronnie on the spot as I'll give her a second to realize I just put her on the spot on that. So Amy, question about, cleaning and STRs, so there's a couple of questions in the chat. The 72-hour downtime, can the cleaner be in the middle of that? And then also with duvet cover cleaning, what's needed for that? So one thing I'll just point out, we were just in the group 6 and, massage tables, there was a lot of questions about cleaning and laundering there. And it seems like that the covering was what was expected to be cleaned, not necessarily, the bolster or the pillow or whatever, but the pillow case, obviously, and the sheets and those sorts of things. So I would think that could be similar in the duvet cover situation. And then Amy, could you respond to the cleaning of STRs and the timing of that?
Sure, you bet, Molly, thank you. So when you have imagine it kind of like, I'll akin it to hotel, motel type of operations, which it is, depending on what you're supplying to the individual or family coming in to stay. You always want to take into account that you will have couches, you'll have other things that are cloth-based that you need to sanitize. We've worked actually with a couple of food facilities that have cloth booths. And what we have come up with is there are some EPA registered sanitizing solutions that you can spray directly on the cloth that don't denature the cloth, even silk. And though that's what I would recommend. I have a list of stuff that food facilities have used that I can send you. But if you spray down and you just spray it on, you make the surface wet. You want to test a couple of spots just to make sure you don't have a color fade, but you want to spray everything down. I would say including your pillows, and then just leave it on there and let it dry for the next person. I would limit as much bedding as you can unless it's necessary. Covers, duvet covers, everything that you have should have the ability to be washed in hot water using some kind of a sanitizing solution, be it bleach or what have you, and dried on high heat. It's good for it's good for a multitude of cures, I should say, for a number of things. using hot water, bleach, and drying in high heat. But you definitely want to do an application or a spray, and you could even spray it on the cloth spray. You could even hose it on the carpeting and just let it dry. And then, of course, for all your hard surfaces, honestly, the best solution to use is the 1/3 cup of bleach to a gallon of water, spraying that down, because you have a less than 60-second kill time, and that's awesome. So you can wipe it down, and by the time somebody else comes in, that bleach odor should have dissipated, because yes, it's going to be strong, but you have options. So, but I would definitely limit, you talk about movie theaters, it's the same scenario. You use covers on them. How many people want to sit on plastic in a movie theater seat, but it's disposable. So outside of going through the expensive disposable, you might want to think about a spray application to all of your cloth surfaces, and that takes care of it. Any hard surface you can wipe down with the bleach solution. So I hope that answers your question, or that helps with your sanitizing question. So.
Yeah, Amy, there's a follow-up asking for the list of those sanitizing products. If you have a link to that, if you could put it in the chat, that'd be great.
You got it.
I also see that Cindy asked about if you're able to listen to another chat or another breakout room, and that will be posted within a couple of days, the recordings as well as the chats. And Taylor, did you want to add anything to that?
They will be posted at mynevadacounty.com/coronavirus/businesses. That's the easiest link to remember. It's also maybe where you're used to going to find all the state guidance and local signage and resources for reopening your business.
Great, thank you. I also see that Zoe Fernandez asked about renting. He rents in an office where there are multiple businesses in one building. Are there any resources for commercial spaces in general to pass on to the landlord? So who would be a good?
Yeah, I responded in the chat to that.
Oh,
there
thank
is a
you.
general office guidance on the state's website. So I would recommend that you send them that link. And if you go to the state's main Roadmap to Recovery website, you'll see the offices is one of the industries listed there.
Great, and you guys are way far ahead of me. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question. You may have already answered it, but about should the 49er Fun Park operate at 25% of normal? How can they keep people apart? So is that answered, or is that a question that we can answer for the group?
So I put the answer in the chat. There's no specific occupancy limitations for family entertainment centers. It really is specific to your site, but that is a good way to meet these requirements. I mean, for 49er Fun Park, for example, limiting occupancy in the arcade, the miniature golf area, the outdoor areas, is a good way to encourage and require that physical distancing guidance.
Okay, great. And boy, I really want to appreciate the county staff facilitators. You guys are so fast. I see very quickly that a lot of these are getting answered. And let's see, we've got the theaters, current outdoor gathering attendance limitations. Was that answered? Is that a Paul question?
I think Molly addressed it.
Okay.
Lori, this is Liz. I would just like to say there was a question about saunas, which we didn't touch on.
Oh, great.
In the personal services, and probably should have. Hot tubs and saunas cannot open at this time.
Okay, great. Let's see, is there anything else? I don't know if this was answered. What are outdoor gathering attendance limitations for cultural ceremonies? And I don't know if that has been answered yet.
I just hit send.
Oh, you're so fast.
At this point, wedding ceremonies are allowed under the faith-based or church guidelines. However, receptions are not allowed to happen.
Okay.
So we had that question to say to the group. We had a question about catering and weddings. And so that was something we had talked about, and I had recommended that it does promote the communal gathering, but it should not be buffet style. But I think it was something that it would be better suited if they would call and we talk through the process and what their plan is. So that's good guidance. So the individual that was asking a question, I believe it was Gina in our group about weddings and catering. It looks like there's a portion or a possibility that a part of the ceremony can be allowed, but the reception has restricted. So
Yeah, the reception is not allowed. It's not only restrictions, but no reception.
there you go.
Only the ceremony.
Okay.
And
I
so
think that answers Gretchen's question.
yeah, so Gretchen had asked about for the Miners Foundry, be a gathering at the Center for the Arts Foundry of 100 people, if that's 25% of capacity. So it sounds like it's not possible right now.
Only as a ceremony with social distancing, not as a reception.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We're getting some new messages in.
Lori, I think
yes.
we missed one. I don't see that we answered Mia's question about clients with chemical sensitivity. Are there alternatives to sanitizer?
And I think that one is going to go to Amy. Is that right? Who would take that on about clients who have chemical sensitivities? That's a great question.
So it is a great question, and it's a common thing in food industry, regardless, before COVID. So you definitely, if you have people coming in or you want to let them know up front, this is a sanitizer that we are using. If you are using a bleach solution or using a quaternary solution, that would be part of your signage to let them know this is what we have in play. We do have wipes here in our office, but I have to buy sanitizing solution that's unscented because I have several people. Unfortunately, companies like Clorox and Lysol love to put those lovely flowery scents in all of their wipes. So we have to go with the straight alcohol, those that are free and clear. But I would definitely make it known before the individual enters your establishment and that what kind of sanitizers you're using. That's the best. That's the best you can do, truly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for bringing that to our attention. Does it seem like there are any other unanswered questions? I see that a lot of information's been flying back and forth in the chats, but we want to make sure that if we've overlooked it, and again, we appreciate Jennifer for speaking up there. So we'll give you another moment if you wanted to add anything else. And I do want to give Caleb Dardick a chance to talk about the Relief Fund. So Caleb, did you want to talk about the Nevada County Relief Fund?
Sure, I'm happy to. Most of you on this phone call are owners of small businesses, and you've been hit hard by the stay-at-home order. And even though we're starting to come back on, which is exciting, many of you still need assistance with this transition, as well as perhaps assistance with complying with these guidances in terms of the expense and cost related. So the community has been raising money to support nonprofits and small businesses who are dealing with this crisis. It's called the Nevada County Relief Fund, and it's at nevcorelief.org. We have raised $345,000 to date, starting off with a $100,000 contribution from Nevada County. And we are hoping to raise $500,000 by the 4th of July. We dispersed our first round of funding about at the end of May for $210,000, and we're hoping to disperse another similar amount by the first week of July. So applications open tomorrow at noon, and then we'll close on the 24th. And I'm going to put into the chat a link to today's press release that went out. So you can go there, but nevcorelief.org is a good site. Go to the apply page. That will be live tomorrow. And what small businesses can apply for is something called a micro grant up to $5,000. So there's going to be a few questions. How has COVID affected your business? How are you responding to it? And what particular guidelines or practices are you putting in place, either physical things like plexiglass, or in the case of, say, the massage therapists and others that have to, wipe everything down and have disposable, products. What do you need? And so this is one way that the community is coming together to help. We've had several hundred community members donate to meet the county's match. So the first 100,000 froze from the county, and the second 245,000 has come from your neighbors in $20 and $50 and $100 increments. And we want to get it out to help you because everyone wants to help our local business communities. So that's something that you can take a look at and see if it's a good fit. I mean, it's very competitive. Unfortunately, in the last round, we had 175 people apply for the $5,000 micro grant, and we were only able to fund 28. So definitely, you know, make the case for how it's affected your business and what you'd use the money for.
Thank you, Caleb. That's a great resource. And again, that is in the chat, how to connect with that. It's also on the Nevada County website if for some reason you can't connect with that in the chat. And you can save the chat. The county will be posting this, but if you want to save the chat, at the very bottom of the chat, there are 3 little dots. And if you connect or move your mouse over those, it says save chat. And so that will save that to your computer. So I don't see any additional questions that haven't been answered. Before we have our final wrap up, I just want to check to see if Molly has any final thoughts that you'd like to share.
No, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here. We hope that this was valuable information for you and you feel more prepared to reopen your business safely and to keep yourself and your employees and your customers safe. So thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate it and look forward to the next time that we're able to get together.
Again, I want to thank you for being here and invite you to let us know how this worked for you in the chat. If there's something that we could do to improve this session, love to hear it, because that is the goal, is to make this easy information to get and accessible to you. So if it met your expectations today, you could just say it, you know, yes, met it. If it didn't, then we'd love to hear how we can improve. But other than that, unless we have anybody else, one of our county facilitators that wants to say anything, we would just want to thank you and wish you a good evening.
Yeah, I would
so thank you.
Yeah, maybe
Oh,
just
go
one
ahead.
last thing is just encourage people to use the county website. Taylor and her team have done a remarkable job there. All the state guidances are there. I just put up, you know, the note from the gyms or the fitness centers, and so they're really quite good. And you know, for the most part, the county has been following the state all along, and I think that's a good place to go. And then if you have follow-up questions, we do have the email that's been put in the chat several times, and Molly's been managing that incredibly responsive. So we're here for you. Website, emails, lots of ways to get in touch with staff quickly so that you can get your questions answered and get back to work.
So I will repeat that email. It's COVID-19 recovery@co.nevada.ca.us. And those are reviewed by Molly Dick and then sent to the right person to get the right information so that you can get an individual who can help you. So again, it's in the chat. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for putting that in there. And we thank you and have a very good evening. Thanks for coming today.